Just a little brief video here. I've got this 94 Dodge Cummins back again. There was two issues with it. One of them, the fuel solenoid went on him, and I had to replace that. But he also had a oil pan gasket that was leaking on it. So I pulled the pan off of it, oil pan off of it. Going to replace the gasket, but he's also got a leak on the turbocharger. The discharge oil line on the turbocharger is leaking, and he wants me to look at that. He's also got a problem with the thermostat. Now, I had replaced that thermostat when I did the gear cover gasket. There was an oil leak on that thing too, and I really don't know what it is. So what I'm going to do is, once I get the pan back in and get the engine lowered back down again, I'm going to pull that thermostat out, stick it in a pan with a thermometer and heat it up and see if it's working or not. It's a brand new thermostat that he had bought and just gave to me to stick in when I replaced that valve, or that valve gear cover gasket. So I'll put it in a pan, heat it up with a thermometer, just check to make sure it's opening properly. Not really sure what his issue was that the truck never heats up in the winter time. You know, I mean, he's getting no heat through the heater. He says the temperature gauge in the truck only goes up to 170 degrees, and that's it. Now, kind of these old 5.9 Cummins are notorious for running cold in the winter time. You could drive half an hour before the heater even starts to warm up. It's like you're dressed for the Arctic in these things. But anyways, I'll check it out, see if I can figure out what's going on with it, and I'll try and shoot some other video as I'm doing it. Kind of another thing I wanted to show you was the oil pan. I threw the oil pan up on the chain hoist, and just to kind of drip out into the oil catch basin. But the pan is covered, not the fresh oil. I kind of had it propped up on the oil pan, not the oil pan, but the oil catch basin. I had it propped up on that, and it slipped off and went into it. But if you can see it, I'm not sure how it's coming out in the video, but the pan is just caked with oil and grease, and the whole underside of the truck is like that. Now, it's really hard to figure out. It looks like it's coming out of a lot of different places. It was leaking out of the valve timing gear gasket. It's leaking out of the pan gasket. And I'm not sure, it's leaking out of the turbo oil discharge line also. But I think mixed in with all of this, there could be a leak on the power steering pump. But the whole thing, I've tried power washing it off, and it's really hard to get to it without maybe getting the truck up on a lift and actually being able to get under there with a power washer. It's almost near impossible to get this thing cleaned up. I power washed it like probably 4 times now, and it's like you're getting layer after layer after layer off it, but there's still old oil grease on there, and it's really hard to tell where any new leaks are, because it's just the underside is just saturated. And I'll try and take you under the truck here and show it to you, but let me move the camera and I'll show you under the truck. This is kind of a video of that underside of the truck that I was talking about, and everything is just covered with oil and grease, and looks like somebody that might have owned it did a lot of off-roading, and it's covered with mud. But I power washed this thing a number of times, and it just keeps, I mean, there's still dirt. You again, like I was saying before, wash off layer after layer, but there's still layers underneath it. And hopefully we can get to it after a while. Like back in there now, it almost appears back in there, that's where that tube that's coming down there is where the dipstick goes down into the oil pan. And it almost appears that that tube it came off at one point in time and oil blew out of it, because it's there isn't a trail of oil from the top of the engine, like say from the valve cover down to that. It's like a pool of oil around where the dipstick tube fits into the top, or the block where the oil pan goes on. So it kind of appears like it almost blew up out of there. It's really baffling. You know, there's so many places where there's oil on this truck that it's kind of overwhelming almost. And the kid, it's a young kid that owns the truck, and he wants to get it fixed up, and he wants to put some performance parts on it. He was told when he bought the truck that there were some performance parts on it, but I'm not really sure. He says there's 100 horse injectors on the thing, and they put a new turbocharger on it, but that turbocharger actually looks like something off of maybe a Ford. But anyways, that's it. Get the oil pan back on after I get it washed out in the parts cleaner, and I'll show you the. This is a shot of the engine bay of the 94 Dodge Cummins. I just kind of wanted to make this video as kind of an overview video of the truck. I'm not sure where I'm going to install this video into the videos as I post them. Cummins has been an ongoing project, and what it started out to be was oil leaks. The kid that owns the truck he had bought the truck, and it had a bunch of oil leaks. The engine bay, bottom of the truck, from the engine bay back, was saturated in oil. And we went through a long process of trying to figure out where it was coming from. Some of it was coming from the timing gear cover gasket. Some of it was coming from the oil pan. And then what happened was I fixed the oil pan, and he had a fuel solenoid that went, repaired all of that, and 2 days later he calls me up and he says I blew a head gasket. Well, I went out and picked the truck up at his house, brought it back to the shop, and took a look at the head. And after removing the turbocharger and some other things, it was very evident that there was coolant and oil coming out of the head gasket. What I did was started pulling it down with the intention of removing replacing the head gasket and probably putting in new head studs, checking the head to make sure it wasn't warped. When I actually started removing the head, it turned out I don't really think that he blew a head gasket per se. Somebody else had worked on this truck before he bought it, and when they put the head back together, apparently they never torqued the head studs. Or if they torqued the head studs, they did it improperly, because the front head studs, and they were aftermarket head studs. The ones in the front towards the number 1 cylinder were tight. The ones in the back, I almost fell over when I went to pull on these things. They were so loose. And I don't really think, in hindsight now that we've got the engine out and all torn apart, that he actually blew a head gasket in the normal sense of blowing a head gasket off. I think he was losing compression oil antifreeze out of the head gasket because the head was never properly installed and torqued onto the block to begin with. And it was just a matter of time before that gasket gave out and it started leaking, and he started having issues with the way the truck was running. So, with that being said, I've kind of reviewed the videos that we've done so far on this project, and that the point of where we were going and how we got there was never really discussed, and that's kind of what happened. So there's footages of me fixing a gasket on the timing gear cover plate. There's videos of me replacing the pan gasket and fixing the fuel solenoid. And then we're going to pop up to a video of where the head was off. And that's how we got to the video of where the head was off, is that he actually, 2 days after I gave him the truck back from installing the fuel solenoid and the oil pan gasket, he called me up with the issue of he thought he blew a head gasket. So here we are in kind of an overview, and what he has decided to do is there was a couple of pistons that were burned. He decided he wanted to build the truck to begin with, and he decided to go ahead and start doing that right now. Now, it's going to kind of be a long, ongoing project, and I'll bring you back after I answer the phone. So I'm back again after the phone call. So the point of this whole thing is it really wasn't a decisive video showing that where the thought came from of building the engine. It was his intention to build the engine all along, and it got to the point after the head gasket that he says he agreed that we just might as well pull the engine out and try and find out where all of the issues were. Gaskets and leaking, and I think I've got a problem with the pump for the power steering. It was also leaking oil. So we want to take a look at everything now. So, and time is not of an issue apparently to him. He's got another vehicle that he can use. So we're going to try and straighten out this entire mess. This is the engine bay after it has been power washed. It was just covered in oil, all sorts of oil. And we have these cob job wiring things where people have run wires. So we kind of want to straighten the whole thing out. So that's how we've got to this point. And again, there was no video shot of the decisive moment of, well, okay, let's pull the engine out and and do this and that. So this video is just kind of serves for that purpose. And we've been ordering parts. We ordered pistons. We're going to put a different performance cam in it. We're putting a Air Dog 2 fuel pump on it. At some point in time, he is going to put a different P pump on it. He is also going to put a bigger turbo on it. When that happens, I'm not really exactly sure. It depends on how his money situation goes. So this is how we got to this point, and this is where we are right now. And again, I'm not really sure where I'm going to throw this episode into this video series, but just so that everybody has an understanding of why the sequence of videos happened the way they did without a decisive overview of where we were going. This is how it happened. So I'll bring you back for more as we progress along.